Welcome back, welcome back. Following the failed air bomb of December the 25th, the Gulf state of Yemen has been propelled onto our television screens and into our headlines. The poorest of the Arab states, Yemen is now portrayed as a sort of hotbed of radicalisation and a training ground for al-Qaeda cells. Earlier this week, Britain, France and the US, at least temporarily, closed their embassies in Yemen amid security fears, and British Prime Minister Gordon Brown is to host an emergency summit on this terror threat posed by Yemen in London later this month. So has Yemen tipped for the moment into the failed and dangerous state category? I'm joined by the convener of the Yemen Forum at Chatham House, Ginny Hill. Ginny, welcome.
Thank you.
Where do we put at this moment Yemen? I mean, people say it will be a failed nation unless something miraculous happens in a year, or do you think it's a failed nation now? And how much can we trust protestations that they're on our side and not on al-Qaeda's side?
Well, the Yemeni government very much resists the notion that their country can be characterised as a failed state. And there is a certain amount of arbitrary distinction between fragile state and failed state. But the underlying fundamental challenge that the Yemeni country faces at the moment is actually an economic challenge. The country is heavily dependent on oil revenue, and the oil revenue is falling because oil production is falling.
To what extent are they allies, or any of them allies, of al-Qaeda, or is it very much a minority thing? Can we trust the current regime to be on our side, or is it dubious exactly where it stands?
Well, the American government has no choice in the matter. They have to work with Yemen's president, they have to work with the Yemeni military. Because of Yemen's location on the border of Saudi Arabia, it would be so politically sensitive for the American military to deploy on Yemeni soil, and it would put the Yemeni government in a very difficult position. Going back, Yemenis have been involved in al-Qaeda from the very early days, not just Yemeni nationals, but also ethnic Yemenis that were raised in Saudi Arabia. And the Yemeni government has at times cooperated very well with the American officials. But there was a jailbreak in Yemen in 2006 when more than 20 terrorist suspects and convicts escaped from a very high security jail in the capital. And since that time, we've seen the terrorist networks growing in capacity and ambition inside the country.
Because we've seen and heard American security experts and in the government and so on say, no, we knew about Yemen. We've known there was al-Qaeda cells there since 2006. Is that right?
Well, Yemen has been growing as a country of concern over the last few years, and certainly during the course of 2009. What happened with the Christmas Day plane plot is that it's propelled the story into the media headlines, and there's much greater attention now on what's actually happening inside the country.
And how many al-Qaeda operatives are there operating, do you guess, in the country?
There have been a number of claims made about the number of operatives that might be present in the country. I think going right back, the challenge here is that the Yemeni government has had to rely on people who had affiliations with Islamists and jihadis right back to the formation of the Yemeni state. There were large numbers of Yemenis that went to fight in Afghanistan against the Soviets, and they came home to Yemen, and they supported the president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, in the north in his war against the former socialist state in the south. So the northern state has very much relied on some of these figures in the past, and this is where some of the challenges lie.
And the other challenges lie partially, as we've said, economically, dwindling supplies of oil, dwindling supplies of water.
Indeed, and a rapidly growing population, and a third of the population currently living on the breadline, and very, very poor food security. So there's a massive humanitarian dimension to this story, and if there isn't rapid attempts made to stabilise the situation, we could see this unfolding in a rather unfortunate manner over the next few years.
And you've been there on and off between 2006 and 2008 and so on. In a word, what sort of country, what hits you about it? That it's poor, that it's defiant, that it's al-Qaeda? What's it like to live there?
The Yemeni people are extremely warm people, and they have a very strong sense of self as being Islamic, Arab. The Prophet Muhammad himself praised the Yemenis for their pious observance and their devotion to religion, and this is something they're very proud of. I think what I notice in Yemen is that the security situation has really deteriorated in the 3 years since I first moved there. It's very, very difficult for Western nationals, diplomats and aid workers to leave the capital now because of the threat from terrorism outside of the capital. I think what's essential about the international community's response to the situation now is that any counter-terrorism measures are embedded within a much broader approach that seeks to lower the temperature inside the country, to find a political solution and to help work towards economic and social reform that will try to stabilise this over the long term.
Thank you very much indeed, Gillian.
Thank you.
The global financial meltdown overshadowed many countries in 2009, but for some it continues to cast a shadow. Then again, other countries, particularly in the developing world, have already emerged from the crisis and look forward to strong growth in 2010. Countries like Thailand, whose finance minister, Korn Chatikavanij, has just been voted Global Finance Minister of the Year by the Banker magazine, subsidiary of the Financial Times. So, do they have a lesson for the rest of the world? Korn Chatikavanij is here with me right now, and let me begin by saying welcome and congratulations on this award which you received last night, and Global Minister, Finance Minister of the Year. It's a big title and it's a big honour, and basically it's because you have been a glowing example, Thailand, of this situation where you have overcome the problem of the credit crunch. What did you do that was most important in that? The stimulus packages or what?
The stimulus package was an important part of it, Sir David. The one thing we had going for us in Thailand, as with many other Asian economies, is that we didn't have a financial crisis to go along with the economic crisis. We had our own financial meltdown in 1997. Yeah. That has meant that we entered this particular crisis with a very strong financial sector, which remains today.
What was the key thing you did yourself?
Well, the stimulus package was a very important part of it. When the crisis hit the Western world, and I was in the UK actually the day Northern Rock went under, and that sent some alarm bells ringing, because we kind of seen it before out in the East, and we kind of understood where that might lead to. And so when the financial crisis hit our shores through reduction in demand for our exports and so on and so forth, we were ready with the stimulus package that could fill that gap. And we actually had to launch two packages. One was a short-term measure designed to immediately stimulate demand. And the second one was a somewhat longer-term measure, which is designed to stimulate investment.
To what extent do you think bankers have deserved part of the blame for what happened around the world in this, that people say the bankers were greedy and so on and so forth? Do you think that's true?
I think it's true, definitely. I was actually a banker myself before I came into politics.
But you weren't greedy, were you?
We all had an element of greed in us. In fact, you know, I have to say it was encouraged. The difference is how well one was being regulated, and I think the Far East, we learned our lessons of so-called, you know, completely free markets and the weakness of a model which allowed sort of complete laissez-faire in banking regulations. So we were somewhat more constricted in terms of what our banks were able to do, and so on and so forth. And I think that stood us in good stead coming into this particular crisis.
And what about the ousted Prime Minister, Mr. Thaksin, who is now a consultant, etc., in Cambodia, and there has been cut off of diplomatic relations because of this? Is he a threat, do you think, to Thailand? What he's doing there, is he a threat to the government, the democracy, the monarchy, the constitution? Is he a threat?
All of the above. I think he is a threat. Not least because of two factors. One, he has pretty much unlimited financial resources in the context of what he wants to do. And secondly, he does retain a very large number of genuine supporters within the country. So combine that with his bad intent in terms of what he wants to achieve in the country, get his money back, overturn criminal corruption convictions against him and so on and so forth, that spells trouble. And what he's trying to do is use Cambodia as a base in which to cause instability within Thailand in order to create some kind of a void into which he hopes to be sucked in.
And you would still like, I mean, people of Thailand, or the government of Thailand would like him to be extradited back to Thailand to face charges.
I think that might cause, short-term problems. One could imagine that. But long-term, if Mr. Thaksin was to acknowledge, together, with the rest of the Thais, the sanctity of the judicial system in Thailand, I think that's good for the country long-term. And if it means even longer term, he makes a political comeback, then so be it. And
in fact, your king has just celebrated his 82nd birthday, yes, hasn't he? And I have here, thank you very much. This is the thing that you produced, made of rubber, yes, to commemorate.
Yes, we
82 years and more than 60 in power.
That's right. There's great reverence for the king. He hasn't been well physically.
How is he now?
Much better. He's given a clean bill of health by his doctors. So we decided to close down a major street, our equivalent to Champs-Élysées in Bangkok, for about 10 days, and just had huge street parties. And this is to commemorate that party.
Well, I'm delighted to have this. And he said, I noticed in a speech in '78, in his own words, he said, if we hold that the king cannot be criticised, then the king ends up in a difficult position. Yes. He is understanding that there could be criticism.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think about 3 years ago, he made a speech on this issue again, and he said, people say that the king can do no wrong. Well, of course I can't do any wrong, because I'm not allowed to. And again, that's a nice twist, yes, to this mantra.
And after such a long while on the throne and so on, whenever he ceases to be king, mm-hmm, that will be a big adjustment for Thailand to make.
Yes,
to this man who is so beloved after 60 years and 82 years and so on.
Most Thais, me included, since I was born, we've had this one king. So it will be a shock to the system. But we have the monarchy is a strong institution in itself. We have a strong parliamentary tradition now, strong and unmoved judicial system that is entirely independent from the executive arm. So the institutions are strong. There's absolutely no reason why Thailand shouldn't continue to progress.
Well, we thank you for being with us today, and we send our best wishes that the king makes a complete recovery.
Yes, I'm sure he will. Thank you very much, Sir David.
Thank you for being with us, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
That's all for this week, and my thanks to all of our guests. Do join us again in 7 days' time for another Frost Over the World. Bye-bye for now.